Alright, good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Jones, and I will be doing the Hershey Company for the 447 project. So just a little background on Hershey. Hershey is the Hershey Company is commonly known as Hershey's, and on the New York Stock Exchange where it's sold, its ticker is HSY. It was founded in 1894 by Milton S. Hershey, who was actually famously known for his caramel, and then took the opportunity after buying some equipment at a World Fair to take the opportunity to make chocolate, and that's where we get Hershey's chocolate from. The company itself is headquartered in Derry Township, Pennsylvania. They manufacture everything from candy to cookies, cakes, milkshakes, drinks, and much more that we see all the time when we go to stores and gas stations. They also represent companies like Reese's, Butterfingers, things like that. And they're also one of the largest chocolate manufacturers in the world. To start off their production in 2018, Hershey's had a revenue of $7.719 billion, which was an increase of 3.67% from their revenue in 2017. The stock price had a bit of volatility where it ranged from, at the lowest point, $89.54 on the stock exchange to $114.06, so ranging about $30 to $35 throughout the year. And I brought in the S&P index to kind of give us a better idea, because we're going to compare the two and see how they're correlated. And the S&P index ranged from about $2,695.81 to $2,506.85 throughout the year. This right here is just a little chart showing the daily stock price of Hershey's and how it went throughout the year. Started off pretty well, then lowered, and then towards the end of the year started to rise again. So comparison to the S&P 500, they are positively correlated, not by much, but ranging from correlation of 1 to -1. It's at about 0.05, so about 5.5%. This graph is kind of hard to see. You can see the S&P right here, the way it's rose and lowered, and then you can kind of see a little bit in the Hershey stock. I tried to do the best I could, but you can kind of see where it's gone up and down and up and down. And that's why I brought in the daily stock price, so you can kind of get a better idea. So the thing we're going to focus on is the international business. I think everyone in the world's probably either heard of Hershey's or actually eaten a Hershey's bar. So surprisingly, they didn't have a lot of suppliers. They had about 11 suppliers in 2018, and which is kind of ironic is one of their suppliers was Nestle, who we actually did for our international business. But they had other companies that were local companies, such as Twitter and things like that. And now looking at their customers, which we also see a lot of well-known companies such as Walmart, Walgreens, Target, the places that you would think where you usually go and buy your candies, CVS, Dollar General, Costco, those kind of places. Then we did see a few foreign companies as well that we're going to focus on. So the foreign currency, after looking on Bloomberg and going through the 10K and everything, they do a lot of business internationally with countries such as China, Malaysia, places like that. But they really focused only on their top, 5 to 6 currencies that they dealt with. So what I did was I kind of broke it down to some of the other countries that Hershey worked with, whether they had factories there or they shipped there, received supplies and stuff from there, and kind of looked at what the US dollar did to that currency throughout the year, or actually vice versa, what the foreign currency did to the US dollar. So first we're going to look at North America, we're going to look at Canada, and the Canadian dollar actually weakened to the US dollar in 2018. Also the same with the Mexican peso. They also do business in Brazil, which the Brazil real actually weakened to the US dollar as well. And then going to Europe, we're going to look at the pound and the euro, which those both also weakened. So at this point I was kind of like, oh, everything weakened to the US dollar, which is good because that means that the US dollar strengthened. But then we went to the Japanese yen, and the Japanese yen surprisingly strengthened to the US dollar, meaning that the US dollar weakened to the Japanese yen. So one thing that Hershey's does to try to prevent loss of money and finances and stuff like that is they participate in forward contracts and also future contracts. Reading into them, I discovered that they had a lot of success in 2017 from doing forward contracts. So they actually increased the amount that they did. In 2017, they did about 17 million in forward exchange contracts to purchase foreign currencies. And in 2018, they upped that to 33.4 million. And again, that was to purchase foreign currencies. And then in 2017, they actually struggled a lot with the selling of foreign currencies, buying the forward contracts. So they actually kind of decreased it from, it was at like 140 million to 51.8 million to try to prevent those issues that they had as far as hedging and losing money. And the popular currencies, foreign currencies that they usually bought these contracts with was the euro, the British pound, the Brazilian real, the Canadian dollars, and Japanese yen. So the currency that we've looked at to this point. So another thing that I thought was interesting with Hershey's was that they actually buy futures contracts for things like cocoa beans and cocoa powder. And in 2018, it actually benefited them a lot because the price actually went up a lot throughout the year. As you can tell from January, the price of cocoa powder went up, and the price of cocoa beans went up a lot throughout the summer, and then kind of decreased and increased again. But they were able to hedge and were able to not lose a lot of money because they were able to get their futures contracts. The annual average of the price, and another thing about the cocoa beans is they're actually sold by the ton, but they're priced by the pound. So you have to buy a ton when you buy, but you pay by the pound. So the high throughout the year was $1.23, and the low was 88 cents. And they were able to have the average of $1.06 throughout the year. And as you can see right here, this is also how much it was for the ton. Like I said, it was bought by the ton, but priced by the pound. So that was kind of interesting to me that they actually would buy futures contracts for cocoa beans. So just kind of a quick summarization before we move on to the next company is Hershey's has had a lot of experience with international business throughout the years. Obviously having to buy cocoa beans, obviously Milton Hershey actually bought the equipment from Germany to start his chocolate business. So when it comes to investing in this company, they have a lot of experience. So at this point, they really know what they're doing. Obviously, you can't always be 100% sure what's going to happen in the future as far as what natural disasters may occur or other things that occur that cause the price of current or foreign currencies and stuff to fluctuate. But they do have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge on what they need to do in order to hedge and to protect themselves from losing a lot of money financially and also gaining a lot of money financially. So now we're going to move on to the next company.
Hey, I am Connor Berthlot, and I'm going to be focusing on Nestle, which is our ADR. So Nestle started out also as a chocolate company, chocolate and confectionery, but they have grown to the world's largest food company by revenue since 2014. They are headquartered in Switzerland, but they're actually owned primarily by foreign investors, including an over 50% stake by American investors. So mostly international, mostly American investors. And they have several brands, which I'll show you right here. You can see everything from Nestle Pure Life Water to Purina pet food to things like Nestle Crunch Bars, traditional candy. So here we have the regional breakdown. They have three regions: the Americas region, AMS, the EMENA, the Europe, Middle East, and Northern Africa, and then the AOA, which is Asia, Oceania, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And you can kind of see here sales by resources, employees, and factories. And one thing we are going to focus on later on in the slides is utilization of those resources. And so you can kind of see how well the Americas does relative to the other two. You can kind of see, 1/3 of sales in both the other two, or a quarter even, with, more resources compared to America. But anyway, The Americas is the largest region by revenue, and it contains Nestle's largest market, which is the United States. Again, most significant currency is the USD. So I want to say it is 21 billion in USD in revenue, which is by far the largest revenue. And then, like I said, utilization, they use the least amount of resources to generate the most amount of revenue, which is pretty important. Here we have the EMENA, which is Europe, Middle East, and Northern Africa, the second largest market, and it contains the headquarters. So containing the headquarters might be the reason for the resource glut, as I call it. Just having the employees doing administrative could include that. Here is AOA, which is Asia, Oceania, and Sub-Saharan Africa. It is the final region, and the most important part of it is China, which is the second largest market to Nestle. Looking at Bloomberg data, they had China had the largest amount of expenditures, and this kind of implies that they're expanding a lot in that region. A lot of companies are doing that. China's economy is growing at incredible rates, so I think they're kind of just trying to focus in on that Chinese region in the future. So start expecting higher revenue from the Chinese markets in the future. And then the reason I kind of didn't focus a whole lot on actual currency positions for Nestle, like USD, Euro, anything like that, is actually because of their hedging policy. They use a couple different forms. The most unique and kind of the one that stood out to me was the actual way they report it. While most companies report currencies at the time of transaction or even at the time of reporting, Nestle uses a weighted average exchange rate to smooth out kind of all of the inconsistencies, so no extreme currency change will really affect their reporting at all. They also use traditional things like forwards and currency swaps to kind of hedge, and they actually have a value at risk model, which you can see limits their exposure to 10 million CHF, which is the Swiss franc, daily with 95% confidence. And using that, they actually were able to maintain their losses for currency risk to only 0.5% of their revenue, which is obviously an extremely low number. So obviously their hedging policies are working out pretty well. I think that this is kind of the reason Nestle is able to succeed in emerging markets so well. Nestle has 43% of the revenue, which for the world's largest food company is obviously huge. Comes from emerging markets, and I think this is because they're able to mitigate the risk usually associated with these markets with currency. Obviously they have very volatile currencies in these markets due to how quickly they're expanding. So being able to mitigate that risk with a good hedging policy has seemed to really pay out for Nestle. And then last thing is the SMI benchmark. The SMI is the Swiss Market Index, which is the primary index Nestle is on. I was really surprised to see the correlation value. So something around 0.30, so showing around 30% correlation. I expected it to be much higher, seeing as how Nestle is a giant company and Switzerland is a fairly small country. But the reason that it is only 0.3 is because SMI caps their index at 18%. So even though Nestle represents a significantly higher portion of that index, they're capped at 18%, so it's going to lower the correlation. The fact that it's still positive means that obviously Nestle correlates strongly with the index. It just doesn't really properly display how strong it is. But anyway, yep, that is our presentation. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.